In August of 1942, a young woman arrived at the White House carrying a reputation that terrified Nazi Germany. Her name was Lyudmila Pavlichenko. To soldiers across the Eastern Front, she was known as Lady Death. At only 25 years old, the Soviet sniper already had 309 confirmed kills, making her the deadliest female sniper in military history. She had survived artillery bombardments, sniper duels, starvation, and the brutal siege of Sevastopol. Now somehow she stood in Washington, D.C. She spoke very little English. She suffered from severe combat trauma, and she had spent the last year crawling through mud while Europe burned around her. Waiting to greet her was First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. On paper, the two women belonged to completely different worlds. One lived at the center of American political power. The other had survived one of the bloodiest battlefields on Earth. But over the next several years, these two women would form one of the most unexpected friendships of the 20th century. By 1942, the Soviet Union was being devastated by Nazi Germany. Entire cities had fallen into ruin. Desperate for support, Joseph Stalin pressured the United States to open a second front in Europe. To help rally American public opinion, the Soviet government sent Lyudmila Pavlichenko to America as part of a diplomatic delegation. Before the war, she had been a university history student. Now she was an elite sniper feared across the Eastern Front. Enemy soldiers reportedly attempted to bribe her through loudspeakers, promising money and safety if she surrendered. She refused every offer. But when Lyudmila arrived in America, the press focused less on the war and more on her appearance. Reporters questioned her makeup. They criticized her uniform. One reporter even mocked the length of her skirt. To Lyudmila, the questions were insulting. She had watched fellow soldiers die beside her. She had nearly died herself, and now she was being questioned about fashion. Finally, she answered the reporters directly. "I wear my uniform with honor. It has the Order of Lenin on it. It has been covered in blood in battle." The room fell silent. Watching all of this unfold was Eleanor Roosevelt. And unlike the reporters surrounding her, Eleanor immediately understood what she was truly seeing. Not propaganda, not a political symbol, but a deeply wounded young woman carrying the psychological scars of war. Disturbed by the treatment Lyudmila received from the press, Eleanor Roosevelt made an extraordinary decision. She personally joined the Soviet sniper on a speaking tour across the United States. Together, the two women traveled through major cities including New York, Chicago, and San Francisco, speaking before enormous crowds about the realities of war. Day after day, Lyudmila relived battlefield memories before thousands of strangers. But during the long train rides between cities, something unexpected happened. The First Lady and the sniper slowly became friends. Despite the language barrier, the two women developed a quiet understanding built on trust and mutual respect. One evening at the Roosevelt estate in Hyde Park, Eleanor noticed that Lyudmila owned almost no civilian clothing. The Soviet sniper had arrived carrying little more than her military uniforms. Wanting to help, Eleanor took one of her own pairs of silk pajamas and carefully altered them by hand so they would fit the much shorter Lyudmila. But as Lyudmila changed clothes, Eleanor noticed something horrifying. Stretching across the sniper's back was a massive scar left behind by exploding mortar shrapnel during the siege of Sevastopol. In that moment, the war stopped being distant politics. Standing before the First Lady was not merely a Soviet soldier. She was a survivor. As the tour continued, Lyudmila grew stronger and more confident before American audiences. Then came Chicago. Standing before thousands of people, the young sniper delivered the speech that would define her legacy forever. "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. In a single moment, Lyudmila Pavlichenko transformed from a misunderstood foreign soldier into an international symbol of resistance against fascism. The tour became a major success. Crowds across America packed theaters and public halls to hear the young Soviet sniper speak about the brutal realities of war. For many Americans, Lyudmila Pavlichenko transformed from a distant foreign figure into a symbol of resistance against fascism. But as World War II came to an end, the alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union quickly began to collapse. The world was changing, and soon the growing tensions of the Cold War would separate the two women entirely. Lyudmila returned home to the Soviet Union. There, she completed her studies and attempted to rebuild her life after the devastation of war. but the psychological scars of combat never fully disappeared. Meanwhile, Eleanor Roosevelt continued her humanitarian work on the world stage, becoming one of the most respected political figures in America. For years, the Iron Curtain stood between them. No visits, no phone calls, no reunions. 15 years passed. Then, in 1957, during the height of Cold War paranoia, Eleanor Roosevelt traveled to Moscow. The Soviet government monitored her movements closely. Every meeting was controlled. Every conversation was watched. But Eleanor had one condition. She refused to leave the Soviet Union unless she was allowed to see Lyudmila Pavlichenko again. Eventually, permission was granted. After 15 years apart, the two women finally reunited. Older now, changed by history, but still bound together by the friendship they had formed during the darkest days of World War II. For a brief moment, politics disappeared. The Cold War disappeared, and standing together once again were not two international symbols, but two women who had never forgotten one another. Their story remains one of the most extraordinary and unlikely friendships of the 20th century. A battle-scarred Soviet sniper, an American First Lady, and a bond that survived war, distance, and history itself.